Rock and roll may live forever, but we only retire once. Kevin Lamour of Our Financial Plans and Quadris Investment Services offers a large range of financial solutions from some of the biggest leaders in the investment and insurance landscape of Canada. See how a solid financial plan built with friendly and professional advice can help. Find out more at ourfinancialplans.ca or give them a call at 705-949-1316. Welcome to another episode of the Lonesome Cowboy Podcast. Brian Trombley, your host here, and I have a special guest today. A little bit different, but yet very much in the music kind of thing. I've talked about this project a lot on the show, and I've talked about it on my socials. And I have with me today Rob Horgan, I am honored to speak to, from the November Project. Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Really good, Brian. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's awesome, man. I'm just so thrilled to connect with you. I'm glad you said yes, because I got so excited. That was one of the most fun songs I ever wrote when I got involved with that. Now, just to recap for the folks, Rob has this thing called the November Project, and the November Project, he has 300 letters plus from his grandparents. And he put out a call through Folk Canada and said, hey, if any musicians or anybody wants to try something. And I did. And I was really super honored that he allowed me to do that. So there you go, Rob. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to fill in about the project for folks and let them know maybe a bit more that I didn't cover.
Sure. So there's a focus of the letters that were written between 1943 and 1946. And at that time, my grandfather was drafted into the war as part of the Canadian Replacement Infantry units and arrived in the United Kingdom in late 1943. And keeping in touch via letters is what a lot of our ancestors did. And I was very, very fortunate to be handed a grocery bag full of all of these love letters. And it happened at a time in my life where it was, according to the rules of midlife crisis, I'm going to live to literally 100 because I had my midlife crisis at 50. And this was, it was a big change in my life. And mentally, I didn't have a narrative to figure out how to move on. So these love letters, as I was transcribing them, I was using voice to text and transcribing them just using a Google Doc, and turned it into a series of books and a series of letters I would read at open mics, and working with other musicians and artists. We did a TV series in Ontario with 5 wonderful folk musicians. And since arriving in Halifax, building networks of local musicians here, and fingers crossed Ashley McIsaac is still interested in coming on board and contributing kind of the essence of the sacrifices and learnings of his ancestors, and replicating the process that you went through, Brian, with letting the letters sit with you and connecting to the emotions that you have. So that's a little bit about the project and working with other musicians specifically.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was drawn to it immediately because my father was a World War II veteran. My mother was a war bride when the 4th Canadian Armored Brigade liberated her little town in Belgium. So I glommed onto this right off the bat, because anything I can do to honor my parents and what my father did, I'll jump onto that anytime. So I thought it was such a great project. Now, you are an educator, teacher, and I guess you are Dr. Rob Horgan.
I don't know if I can get called that, but yes, I have a PhD in education.
So when they say over the plane, when they say, is there a doctor on the plane? You got to keep your mouth shut.
I usually go, because I'm a philosopher. So that is my trade.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, I can come up with some really good thoughts at any moment's notice.
I gotta love it. That's excellent. So, Rob, kind of tell me about how you came upon or were given these letters, and what got the ball rolling and everything. How did this whole thing become What it
In
is?
March of 2022, March 2022, my uncle passed on a grocery bag full of love letters. He had been holding on to them. I think since my grandmother had moved out of her home in High Park, and it was just like family heirloom, pass it on to somebody else. Apparently, these letters were stored under my grandparents' pool table in the basement for like 40 plus years. Yeah, maybe longer.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know if anybody in my family had ever gone through all of them other than my grandmother and my grandfather. He had asked her to take care of them so he could review them when he got back to see how much he remembered of the events.
Wow.
So there was a specific intention that he had of please save the letters, and they just proved meaningful to me because shortly after I received them, that was a point in my life where I had to make an immediate change, in my housing that was hard for myself and for my family. So having this grocery bag full of love letters and being able to open them up and start reading them was was very emotional. And on top of that, I have a brain injury and PTSD from a motorcycle accident, so I don't regulate emotions very well to begin with. Um, and I had a really supportive community, so I started reading at open mic. And Bruce, he's one of those people in a town. He's in small town Coburg, Ontario. Bruce Longman is one of those musicians who sees people that are artists that are just struggling with something and encourages them to come out. And he runs this open mic where he said, well, yeah, please come read your love letters. You're doing great. And literally, I was shaking starting out, being on stage and reading love letters. And Bruce said, keep coming back, keep working on it. So I had a great supportive network of other musicians who kind of echo the sentiments of the love letters that I'm reading with their own love songs. That's kind of how it started, was through open mic.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to Bruce Longman and the open mic circuit in Coburg and Port Hope.
That's outstanding. Um, do you have a favorite memory of your grandparents that are corresponding here
Hmm.
that you can share with us?
There's so my memory access to my memories is quite different
Ah,
than what it
yes.
used
Okay.
to be.
My apologies.
And the so my memories most often come from photographs that kind of prompt
Ah,
more of a memory.
I see.
And the most precious one that I have is saying goodbye to my grandmother when I was moving down to Las Vegas to teach for a couple of years.
Oh yeah.
And I was saying goodbye to her, and she would have been 91, I think, at that point.
Mm.
So when I was saying goodbye, I was like, I'm really possibly saying goodbye.
Yeah. No kidding.
And it was very emotional, and it was feelings that, I have not been able to figure out, that much kind of love and the intensity of being grateful for
Mm-hmm.
her love and being aware of her essence, um, and then corresponding with that is the memory that I have of my grandfather's love letters that describe her essence and what it's like to be in her presence. So I have these two memories with artifacts from my grandfather as well as my own memory of loving this wonderful, wonderful human being.
Yeah. What side are your these grandparents who wrote the letters? What side is that on?
These are my father's parents.
Okay.
So my father was actually born while my grandfather was overseas, and when he left Canada, um, he did about 3, 4 months of basic training in Ontario, and then my grandmother, about 8, 8.5 months pregnant, found out that he had left for Canada.
Oh wow.
So she went into the war without her husband there to support the upcoming birth and
Yeah. And right.
everything that followed.
Yeah. So is that Michael that we're when he's talking about in the letters? And
Yes,
that's your dad.
yes, that's right.
Oh
Also,
my
at
God, I got
one
a
point,
chill.
briefly called John,
Oh really?
and there was another name. that was being proposed. So keeping in mind this stage of the war, the mail wasn't so great. So
Yeah.
it could take 4 to 6 weeks for a letter to arrive. So my grandfather would receive other letters that were out of order where my grandmother, agreed to a different name change than what he just last suggested. So they did this for a few cycles and it took about 3, 4 months to name this child.
Yeah. I just got a slight chill from it because of the fact that, I'm speaking to the guy's son that I wrote about in the song. So I think that's awesome. Well, what did your grandfather do when he got back from the military?
um, so from what I understand, I just knew my grandfather as being retired, and knowing that he worked for an uncle in a Persian rug store,
Okay.
possibly selling Persian rugs at Eaton's. I know that at the time in the 1940s, he was working for John Inglis making Bren guns.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't I've not known my grandfather to have a profession, like a craftsman or something that was career long.
Hmm.
Um, mhm. So it was like whenever the opportunities came about, I believe.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's interesting that you mentioned that he helped make Bren guns because that was my father drove the Bren gun carrier and was trained on the Bren gun.
Yes, he often actually commented on his gratitude towards the Employee Management Board Association for sending cigarettes and letter, a parcel or something. So
Yeah.
employment supports were really active at supporting our ancestors
Hmm.
and keeping in touch. I was really touched by that.
Yeah. I when I play the song in public, I always keep a copy of the letter with me, and I read it
Nice, nice.
before that,
That's awesome.
and I tell as much of the story as I can. But I did it one time, and there was a person I used to work with, and then her husband, and they were both in the reserves.
Mm.
And when I talk about these, I simplified it for the song. I called them the canteen trucks. But that NFA, whatever the
Naffy,
name,
yeah.
yeah, NAFI. I was giving the introduction. I says, I don't know what this is. I says, but I says, so I refer to them as the canteen trucks. And the fellow from the reserves came up afterwards. He says, I really love the song. And he says, by the way, that program still goes on. He says, and I've taken stuff from those kind of trucks. And I said, that's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. So that's really awesome that Michael that I mentioned in the song, that's your dad. So did he end
Yeah,
up being Michael or was he something else?
he was. Yeah, he
Okay,
was.
cool.
He was Michael John for the record.
Cool.
John Michael, and there was another set of names that were being proposed, but it ended up being Michael John.
Exactly. Um, is the November project, is that an ongoing thing, Rob? You think is it? Or is it sometime is it going to be put to bed? Because I see this happening at like every Remembrance Day kind of thing almost.
Yeah, part of the so there's the show, the November Project, and the
Hmm.
story, and then there's the community arts, the International Community Arts Project version of it. So encouraging our neighbors, our family, to have artistic expressions once a year, every November, starting in their home. Just to tell the story of their ancestors and a selection of readings that honor the sacrifices and learnings of their ancestors, whether it's literally their family or perhaps their chosen family or the ancestral history of a vulnerable group. Like where I live on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people on Mi'kmaqui. So that ancestral story is more important to me than the political one that is told. So I see this as an ongoing activity, and every year we kind of get better at bringing our artistic expressions of our tributes to the sacrifices and learnings of our ancestors. I think that type of reflection um, amongst people that we know and care about
Hmm.
helps us helps others to understand who we are
Yeah.
and kind of the fights that we're finding are worth fighting. And when we find out that we share the same fights, like human rights, for everyone to get home and to keep our families together, if we agree on those three things, then we can do a lot of work together to
Okay.
raise awareness, to raise support for each other.
Yeah. I find it disheartening that young people really don't have any interest in learning about that particular subject or a lot of history subjects like Canada's role in World War II and I don't even know if they fathom the seriousness of that war. And that's why we all get worked up when there's talk of another thing going on. Did you make any connections with young people during this, Rob, and maybe opened up a few eyes and hearts?
Yes. So there's having been an elementary school teacher as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Grade three is kind of my target audience when I'm looking at making sure my show is accessible to folks. So there's a duplicate message in the November project with an elementary school focus called the Good Neighbor Project. The Good Neighbor Project is based on the same love letters, but the sexting portions of their love that's taken out. The darker portions of war are taken out, and it's talking about what it means to be a good neighbor, to support people who might need support. And for my grandpa, that was the story was told as he was going through Italy, Belgium, Holland, Germany, of all the venues that he went to take in music, whether it was just an open mic and people just brought whatever they brought, or he deliberately set out to go to Rome while on leave to see the Royal Opera, and describing it in the letter that there was 5 tiers of boxes, and he went to see the works of Michelangelo, and all these spaces along his journey over the 2.5 years really highlighted the importance of the arts and these spaces of creating these spaces and places for people to be reminded of the fights worth fighting, and that's part of our obligation about being a good neighbor is to share some of our art, to brighten our community and find an audience. That's on us.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent words, Rob. Excellent words.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent words. Your grandfather was with the 48th Highlanders, and he saw action in Italy. I didn't get through as many. There was a lot of them there, but did he hit any other? Was he just in the Italy theater, or did he go into the European theater at all?
Yeah. So he was a D-Day Dodger, and his ship was sent out to across the Horn of Africa to go to Italy, and they started up from the boot and moved into Belgium, moved into Holland, and then after the war had ended, he left the 48th Highlanders, being reassigned to the German occupation force.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so he wasn't able to return home right away. He had to wait an extra 8 months of fulfilling other roles in Germany.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you see, he came up and went to Belgium via Italy, and my dad went to Belgium via France.
Right. Okay.
He didn't do D-Day either. He was a D+30 guy. So,
Right.
yeah, when you're working with the Royal Canadian Electrical Mechanical Engineers, you have to go in after the fact.
Right. Yeah.
Did you go into the National Archives or anything like that, Rob, to do any research to support anything your dad did? I know I've done something like that with my dad, so I was just curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some really. I've been looking at different archival sources, and the National Archive of Canada has released a series of about 100 war reels, and these are videos which were films that were shown to military personnel in the field, like when they were showing a new Cary Grant movie, then they would show this war reel. And they were produced from the United Kingdom. So each country had their own propaganda of the employee memo, so to speak. And I'm recognizing kind of the patterns of said propaganda, and it uh, artistically watching for the themes of the videos. It doesn't really matter what country it comes from. The themes of trying to show people and give that impression, especially in light of today's social media of storytelling, and that's what all these were collections of short stories. So it's really really interesting to go back and see the collection of archival footage of what was the story that they wanted to tell their own soldiers, because that's who their audience was.
Sure.
And as an artist, I'm telling a different story to a different audience. It's not necessarily something the Legion wants to pick up on, or nor do I want it to be. It's something that's different. So I'm appreciating the additional sources of archival footage, like the videos that really give a sense of how the mail worked.
Yeah.
Just seeing the scope and scale of the mail delivery, and it being the only connection that they had with family back home.
Yeah. That was basically it, wasn't it? I
Mm-hmm.
wish I don't know if my parents ever exchanged letters, but if they did, I sure would have liked to have got a hold of a few of them, but that never happened. Has this has this inspired you to do something, another project similar, or have you discovered anything else? Or
I haven't found the bottom of this project just
ah,
yet. So, in addition to sharing the story that I share, like I'm always doing a show or planning a show like once a month with another musician. So, the next musicians I'm working with are a Chilean Canadian couple from Halifax, and we're performing at a bookstore. So, I call it a dry canteen show because there's no alcohol.
nice.
And trying to make it as accessible in different smaller community spaces rather than a standard ticketed show in a bigger theater space. So it's always ongoing, and I'm always working with different musicians, different reaches, and the model of the November project is to be always working on next year's show.
Nice.
So that way people now are like, if you're listening right now, now's the time to be thinking about your grandparents and your love for them, and does a song come into mind, and does that match with one of the letters? And I'm sure they do, because there's over 300, and it's very simple.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
is
That's
to have some kind of connection, and reaching all across Canada with the stories of our ancestors and the arts expressions, and connecting them to give these visual patterns of, these are my people, these are also my ancestors' stories, and
hmm
we're actually all are on the same side.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I when I perform the song, uh, there's usually not many dry eyes left in the house when I'm done. Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to build my merch packages, so I have
Oh,
like
cool.
rolls of stickers,
Oh, right
and
on.
I'll mail some out for this November. I'll do a cover for your comic book cover for your song, and a QR code that
Oh,
goes to your video,
that would be awesome.
and
Oh,
then poster up all over downtown. That's people really appreciate the street art,
yeah.
and it's another way of connecting. I've got some fans that are actually collect the stickers, because they're reusable,
Yeah.
recyclable.
Well, that's cool. Now you call your and you are an artist. Now, the art that we're seeing is that stuff you create, Rob?
So I'm using world like original artwork that was created in the 1940s, and these are comic book companies that went out of business. So all their panels are in the public domain. So I take different panels from different publications, redesign them in my form, and then I give it to an artist to redraw. So I don't do the actual drawing,
Okay.
and the design work is coming from what I'm calling as found art, just like a collage. And the exercise is to demonstrate how we don't need AI to, if you're not an artist, you don't need AI. You can, here's a workflow of using found art and redesigning and coming up with my own original contribution to demonstrate that this is an art form. And anything that I do, I try to make sure it's replicable for a grade 3 class. So
Awesome.
that's part of the activities.
I hope my grandson's going to be 5 in April, 2 days after my birthday, and I'm sitting here going, I sure hope he encounters guys like you when he's in school and does cool things. you know?
And you know what? Like, I mean, it won't necessarily be me, obviously,
No.
at his school. But yes, the November Project is reaching out to artists and musicians who understand the importance of reaching a certain demographic. However, they can culturally translate this story with their music to that kind of audience.
Hmm.
And there's so many wonderful artists and musicians in all of our communities, and embedding it into our community
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
school system, through our cultural system, and our social gatherings, public spaces
Yeah.
is critical.
That's awesome. Rob, you kind of inspired me sitting here right now, as a matter of fact, when I thought about my grandson and the work, and you teach with children and stuff like that, I think I'm going to make it a point of putting a little book together and kind of introducing him to his grandparents that he never knew,
Yeah,
and say, your grandfather was, your great grandfather was a soldier,
yeah.
and he was a guy who worked on trains.
And
So,
linking those, I put in QR codes to link people to actual videos and media,
oh yeah,
and that I think is relevant to younger people being able to access the stories that they can manipulate and retell the stories as well. By showing them, here's a video of the Royal Mechanical Engineers 1944, and having it linked to the archival video. So
yeah,
when they grow up saying, "Oh yeah, my great grandpa was in the war. Here's a video,"
yeah.
that's that's really important to make history real.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll actually take a picture of you and send the little memorial plaque I have that's about 3 feet by 4 feet of my father's memorabilia and everything I had it shadow boxed and framed, and
Nice, nice.
yeah, and I want to make sure that I'm going to use stuff like that to introduce my grandson to his grandparents that he never great grandparents that he never met before.
Yeah.
So that's outstanding. What's on the horizon for you, Rob? What's coming up next with the November Project? Anything that we should be watching out for?
Yeah, I've got a big meeting with Ashley McIsaac in Halifax at the end of March, and
Holy cow!
we've had a video call about doing a collaboration. And I'm not always as articulate as I'd like to be, so I'm not sure what he remembers from the conversation, but I remember he's interested in wanting to know more.
Sure, sure.
And I got him measured for some sample concert shirts for him and his manager, just to show off some of the artwork and some of the vibe. And I'm hoping that moves forward, and finding a venue in Halifax for a residency of having a weekly show, so people traveling know where to find us. Come and
Yeah,
sing your love song.
yeah. Rob, tell the folks where they can find out about the November Project. I think Substack's probably the best place for that right now, isn't it?
Yeah, Substack is the nice behind the scenes narrative with
Yeah.
me writing letters to my grandmother in present day,
Yes.
and also on Instagram, a lot of social media about my shows that are coming up. That is the underscore Nov NOV underscore project underscore Canada. And I'm sure if you look up the November Project Canada or the November Project Bell, you'll find the TV series on YouTube as well.
Excellent. Yeah. It's really something, folks, and look into it, and even reach out to Rob and say, hey, I saw this interview and I just wanted to say hi, and tell him that you like the project and tell him you think it's cool. And if you can support him in any way, go to a show. Please do it. please do it, because my heart and my soul is attached to this thing. And I have to admit that out loud because, like I said, if it's got to do with my family and my parents, it deserves recognition.
And all of our ancestors, whatever fights they've been battling over the years, we need to take time to honor their sacrifices and their learnings for us to have a better world than they had.
You got it, exactly. Rob, thank you so much for coming on the program. I cannot thank you enough for even allowing me to be involved in this.
Thank you, Brian. Much appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you.